your gun down, please.
5,
4,
3, 2, 1!
Hello and thanks for joining us for the first film show of the year. I'm here with our critic Lisa Nesselson. Happy New Year, Lisa.
Happy New Year Eve.
Hope you're doing well. Now we're starting with the new female-led spy thriller, The 355, starring Jessica Chastain, Lupita Nyong'o and Penélope Cruz. The movie was partly set here in Paris, as Arnaud Desplechin reports.
Hands!
Put your gun down, please.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1! Pull the trigger! Or you can listen.
Spies from different agencies united by a common enemy. 4 women joining forces to retrieve a top-secret weapon. For actress and producer Jessica Chastain, it was important to break down stereotypes Hollywood has of female spies.
A few years ago, women in espionage would be seen as using their sexual desirability to get what they want before their intellect. And the reality is they do things I can't even fathom. And so I wanted to acknowledge that.
355 was the code name given to the first female spy during the American Revolution. Until today, the agent's real identity isn't known.
I hope when we find our audience, we have women with us, but also men, because of course we need them. But I hope it's a start for another day for the girls.
For different intelligence agencies.
355's release comes in the wake of the Me Too movement. It demonstrates how Hollywood continues to listen to calls for gender equality and open up roles for its leading ladies.
And The 355 is out in cinemas now, next to a French-language adaptation of Philip Roth's 1990 novel Deception. Directed by Arnaud Desplechin, it premiered in Cannes in July. Tell us more.
Well, not everybody agrees with me, but this may be the best screen adaptation of Roth, 8 of whose novels and short stories have been made into feature films before this, including Portnoy's Complaint and American Pastoral, which was Ewan McGregor's directing debut. Desplechin's take on Roth's snatches of conversation 1990 novel is bittersweet, funny, sexy, and entertaining. It's talky as can be, yet unfailingly cinematic, and it was shot entirely during lockdown.
So what's it about?
This zigzagging, emotionally perceptive tale of an American writer abroad and the women he has bedded, or perhaps merely written about having bedded, is accomplished French filmmaking applied to American source material that Desplechin has wanted to bring to the screen for 3 decades, a prospect to which Roth himself gave his blessing. So it's 1987, and 59-year-old married American writer Philip, played by Denny Podolidis, who is terrific in his 4th outing with Desplechin, is living in London with his wife, working in a separate studio apartment and obsessing about the place of Jews in the world when not reveling in the physical and conversational attributes of his Gentile mistress. Léa Seydoux, who you may know as James Bond's love interest, does first-class work as Philip's 33-year-old nameless and unhappily married British lover. Now, here on screen is a depiction of what writers do that revels in Roth's glee in blurring the line between reality and fiction.
It definitely sounds intriguing. Let's take a look at English-speaking Philip Roth characters transposed into French.
Je sais rien de toi. Bien sûr, je sais quelques petites choses, à force de lire tes livres, mais...
Je suis censée croire que cette Anglaise n'existe pas.
Pourquoi ça ne te suffit pas?
Pourquoi ton mari ne te suffit-il pas? Vous couchez encore ensemble?
J'aurais parié que tu me poserais cette question.
J'aime savoir ce qui se passe dans ta tête.
Mais j'ai pas l'intention d'y répondre.
À supposer que je meure et qu'un biographe tombe sur ton nom, qu'est-ce que tu lui dirais?
Il n'a pas écrit un seul de ses livres. Ils ont été écrits par toute une série de maîtresses. Et moi, j'ai écrit les 2 derniers.
Et moi, c'est ça m'humiliait.
C'est un jeu.
Now, Lisa, you mentioned that the film fully embraces the spirit of Roth's work, which is now increasingly being held up as problematic by today's rapidly changing standards.
Yeah, I thought you might ask me about that. Well, the film preemptively mocks and so diffuses any brewing accusations of sexism and misogyny by providing an intimate framework for several of France's most interesting actresses to shine. Talk about meaty roles for women. And in one darkly hilarious fantasy sequence, Philip finds himself on trial in an all-female courtroom for supposedly hating women and sleeping with his students. Now, the thrill in hearing these characters talk and talk and talk and talk is that they're interested in each other, reasonably self-aware, and have senses of humor despite the hurdles of navigating the more selfish corners of romance. Roth had a major influence on Desplechin, who I heard on the radio say that since Roth set all of his work in New Jersey, well, Desplechin decided to set all of his films, until now, in Roubaix, the northern industrial city he's from. He decided not to try and pretend to be a Parisian and instead embrace his roots.
Well, Deception hit French cinemas at the very end of 2021. Ticket sales in France for last year are up nearly 50% on the previous year, on 2020, but they're still half of what they were the year before the pandemic in 2019.
Well, I'd say the results are very, very encouraging under the circumstances, keeping in mind that France, quite wisely, counts the number of tickets sold rather than the amount of money taken in, since ticket prices can vary a great deal. So 96 million tickets were sold in 2021, when theaters were closed for over a third of the year, compared to 65 million the year before, when theaters were closed for nearly half the year, and some people were scared to go to them when they were open. Also, during periods of lockdown, many people left big cities to go live somewhere that maybe wasn't near a lot of movie theaters. But it's still fewer than half the amount of tickets sold before the pandemic, because in 2019, that was a banner year with 213 million tickets sold. Now, the government was nimble and made sure that emergency funds were allocated, thanks to an infusion of 300 million euros between March 2020 and now. No movie theaters or distributors went out of business in France, and most films were able to remain on the path to production. The story is very different in the US, alas, for example, where many movie theaters have gone out of business. 200 movies were made in France last year with strict anti-COVID measures in place.
So although more than half of French households now subscribe to at least one streaming platform with an incredible choice of movies to watch, people are still going out to the movies.
Well, there's an incredible choice of movies to watch in the theaters. Absolutely. In 2021, there were roughly 500 films showing in cinemas. More than 220 of those were French, and around 70 of those were directed by women. So almost half of the movies available were French, and the largest proportion was Hollywood fare. But two of the top 6 films, Camelot and Bac Nord, were French. And that means French audiences are supporting French films, even though the Hollywood movies, such as Spider-Man, No Time to Die, Dune, may end up making more money. But that's also fine, because a little more than 10% of every movie ticket sold in France goes into a fund to make French movies. It's a beautiful system that streaming platforms are now being compelled to contribute to. And I think it's amusing that just a few weeks ago, when Spielberg's West Side Story didn't do as well as hoped, journalists were tripping over themselves in the English-speaking world to say nobody wants to go out to a movie anymore. But a few weeks later, well, people did leave their homes to see Spider-Man. And you've seen the headlines. If seeing Spider-Man was a cure for COVID-19, we'd be well on our way to eradicating the virus.
Indeed. And you said of the 220 French films in theatres last year, more than 70 were directed by women.
Yes, I'm sure there's somebody out there fuming that that's only 1/3 of the total available French films to see. But it happens to be the highest number of movies directed by women of any country on earth. And whatever the director's gender, there were a lot of interesting, full-bodied roles for women of a certain age. Catherine Deneuve, Jacqueline Bisset, Nathalie Baye, Valérie Lemercier, Charlotte Rampling in 3 films, Françoise Fabien starring in Rose in her late 80s, 3 films with 71-year-old Josiane Belasco in just the past few months, not to mention terrific new young female talents.
Excellent news. Now, finally, you're going to tell us about an Icelandic film that's called Lamb. Now, it's made the shortlist of films contending for the Oscar in the international film category. Now, Lamb explores human emotions, but without giving anything away, not in a situation that most people will ever experience. Tell us more.
Well, this is one of the best films I've ever seen about nature versus nurture. It was shot in the striking landscape of Iceland, where Swedish-born actress Noomi Rapace grew up. She's Maria, married to Ingvar. Together they run a sheep farm. Their relationship is loving and equal, outdoorsy, very intimate. This is established with impressive natural vistas and very few words. With great storytelling skill, one day an anomaly is introduced. Something happens, mostly off-screen, and there is no wiggle room for procrastination. The two partners understand each other so well, they're able to incorporate this unexpected development into their lives without skipping a beat.
So is this a film that everyone will enjoy?
Well, I don't know if there's any such thing, but for this, all you have to do is to be open to how a movie can take you someplace you never suspected you wanted to go. It's about family with a capital F, love with a capital L, and nature with a very, very big capital N. This story stuck with me for a long time because it works as a straightforward tale and also as an exploration of what's normal and what's transgressive. And Lamb has been sold to an awful lot of countries, so do seek it out when it plays where you live.
Okay, Lisa Nesselson with a capital L. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to leave you with Lamb. Thanks for watching. Remember our website. We're also on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. There's more news coming up on France 24 after this.
I may not always love you, but long as there are stars above you, you never need to doubt it. I'll make you so sure about it. Farther!